We have been discussing Clay's foray into the anti-mask revolution yesterday in Tennessee. But as we know, there's been a lot of pushback at school board meetings stretching back for months now. And it really began with the pushback against CRT, or critical race theory. Now, if you've paid attention to the Democrat response to our rebellion against the racial underpinnings of CRT indoctrination and all. If you've listened to the way the Democrats try to set all this up, you would say, hold on a second. They change every few weeks. At first, it was there is no CRT in schools. And then it was you don't know what CRT is. You're not allowed to criticize it. And then it was CRT is actually history, which is just a lie. But these are all either misdirections or outright fabrications or falsehoods. This is going on now in schools across the country. They say it's no big deal. They say it's not happening. They say you don't know what it is. They say it's something other than what it is. You picking up a pattern? They're running scared from this one because they've gotten away for a long time with indoctrinating your kids, with teaching your children that their skin color, and we had all thought, right, that we're in a country now, we understood skin color has no bearing on who you are or your worth or your merit or your skill or anything, right? We thought we were trying to be in a totally equal country, a meritocracy where skin color doesn't matter, just the content of your character. But that's not what CRT teaches. And one teacher yesterday at the Loudoun County Public School board meeting decided that she had had enough. And so she resigned. Laura Morris, a fifth grade teacher down in Virginia at Loudoun County Public Schools, she gave an emotional appeal to people. Want to play this one for you.
After reading about your lack of consideration for the growing population of concerned citizens in this division, clearly evidenced by this empty room tonight, where you shut the doors to the public, as well as the emails sent by the superintendent last year reminding me that a dissenting opinion is not allowed even to be spoken in my personal life, going so far as to send a form to my colleagues and I encouraging us to fill it out if we hear one another speaking against the controversial policies being promoted by this school board and adopted in this county.
Clay, there's more, and we want to get to the other part of where she gets really emotional, but can we just jump in here for a second together to weigh in on how she's supposed to snitch? I mean, if you hear people opposing this, they're sending forms. What is this all about? I mean, this really sounds like some crazy Bolshevik nonsense.
I think what we are seeing, and this is big picture, obviously this woman, I applaud her, this fifth grade teacher, for speaking out in the same way that I would applaud anybody who is showing up to their local school boards, the grassroots of democracy. I think this is the new Tea Party movement. Now, you can argue that the Tea Party matters more now than ever before because of the budgetary crisis that we may well find ourselves in, the $1.9 trillion COVID that Joe Biden passed, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure, the $3.5 trillion budget bill that's out there. There's a great line, you start talking about $1 billion every now and then they add up. Well, now we're talking about trillions of dollars and they add up in a hurry. And I think what's going on is there is a innate feeling, and I know many of you listening to us right now feel it, that something is rotten, right? Hamlet, something was rotten in Denmark, something is rotten in America. And I think at the foundational level, many people are circling back to public schools, Buck. And they're seeing it with CRT, and they're seeing it with mask mandates, and they're seeing it with what kids are being instructed, and they're realizing that the rottenness is coming out of what is their taxpayer-funded schools, and people are fed up.
I mean, they're teaching essentially racial Marxism, right? So Marx is all about class warfare and all about taking people based upon where they are in an economic sense and turning them against each other for the elevation of a revolutionary elite. The kind of revolutionary elite that has big parties in fancy places where they don't have to obey the rules, right? I mean, and the people who show up at those kinds of parties. But instead of it being class-based, we have one that is now increasingly based on notions of the fight against white supremacy and the oppression of non-white minorities. And that's all at the heart of CRT. And I do give credit to those who say that really CRT is just the everything is racist ideology.
That's what
which
it is.
In the 1990s, we just referred to this as PC.
That's right.
Great movie, which I'm sure Clay and I didn't check. I'm sure
yes.
You've seen PCU, right? Of course.
And it seemed like it was a satire that would be impossible to ever become a reality. And it's now like it's not even like it's so surpassed.
You couldn't make PCU today because that's how PC the broader society has gotten. So.
You couldn't make most great comedies. I was talking about this, Buck, with my wife the other day, like old school. You couldn't make old school now.
Never. Oh my gosh, you couldn't make There's Something About Mary. I don't even know if you can get away with the 40-year-old virgin. I don't know if you can. I mean, never mind. You go back to like Blazing Saddles. I mean, you go back even further.
Even crazier. But I mean, like the Ace Ventura movie. Go watch Ace Ventura again.
By the way, one of the teachers that we're going to talk about here in a second got into trouble for just saying, I'm not going to use the preferred pronoun thing. And the preferred pronoun thing, for anyone who's wondering how absurd that has gotten now, it is now an expectation. And there are teachers who are leftists who have put out videos that you have to adjust on a day-to-day basis pronoun usage, almost like the weather. You know, today I feel they, them. Tomorrow I feel she, her. And and people who don't abide by this, they're transphobic, Clay. They're transphobic. They're scary. They're horrible. They're bad people who don't. But this is where we are. But let me just bring us back to this teacher in Virginia for a second. Loudoun County Public School teacher. Well, formerly now, because she says she has had enough. This is Laura Morris. And she got emotional about this one.
Within the last year, I was told in one of my so-called equity trainings that white, Christian, able-bodied females currently have the power in our schools, and that, quote, this has to change. Clearly, you've made your point. You no longer value me or many other teachers you've employed in this county. So since my contract outlines the power that you have over my employment in Loudoun County Public Schools, I thought it necessary to resign in front of you. School board, I quit. I quit your policies. I quit your trainings. And I quit being a cog in a machine that tells me to push highly politicized agendas on our most vulnerable constituents, the children.
Clay, you know, this is somebody who clearly loves her job when she's actually allowed to do it the right way, loves teaching kids, and it's being taken from her. It's being taken from her by ideologues who listen to too much NPR and think MSNBC is actually news and probably triple mask alone in their pool at home. I mean, but that's what we're up against now.
The great flaw of America right now is the Democratic Party has allowed itself to be captured by identity politics and cancel culture. And that is the root of everything that they are advancing. And I believe those twin pillars are destroying America from the inside. And we have to destroy the concept of identity politics, which is part of CRT, that you are inextricably defined by what you look like at birth. That you don't have a choice except for your sex, which you can choose, by the way.
You, Clay, and your children are guilty of something you have not done because of what a framing of history suggests, according to the interpretation of people who today want power. And by the way, also never want themselves to have to suffer any ill consequences of the framework and the approach, the ideological brainwashing that they want to do to the rest of everybody.
Which is a great example. We talked about this maybe a month ago, or for people who remember, the Rachel Nichols ESPN story was a great metaphor because she said, wait, you can't take my thing, right? Everybody wants external blame to foist onto someone else. Oh, white men, they're responsible for everything. They're the reason that this country is such a dishonest and not equitable place. I mean, Buck, we were going to talk about this. I pulled this today because I couldn't even believe that it was real, but this is a natural outgrowth of CRT. The Oregon governor signed a law suspending the state's proficiency standards for reading, writing, and math in the name of equity. And they said they had suspended that proficiency requirements because the state needed to develop new graduation standards to benefit people of color who weren't testing high enough on the state exams. Reading, writing, and math.
Well, Clay,
this
is the problem.
To test high.
You cannot have, as a central policy decision, whether it's in education or in admissions to colleges, you cannot have the abolition of meritocracy and then tell people they can't talk about the destruction of meritocracy, right? I mean, you can't actually do this. There's a cognitive dissonance at the heart of all this. I mean, when you look, and you mentioned the Oregon governor, is this really helping people? Is it helping people for them to be graduating from school without very basic skills? And we're talking about individuals here, young people, who are going to be graduating with effectively a level of literacy that won't allow them to get through life, and without being able to do basic math. But we're going to say they're high school graduates because that's going to equalize in society. That's actually not how it works.
And also, these are things that you can test, right? And this is what so fires me up about the entire anti-testing agenda is read a book, first of all. Actually study why the SAT and the ACT came to be. It was because Jewish students were being discriminated against getting into elite Ivy League schools. And so they said, hey, we got to figure out a way so that we're not just rewarding the same rich kids with admission. And so we want to be able to test in some way and apply an even standard to kids all over the country. And these baseline tests are not difficult, but we know, Buck, whether somebody's good at reading, writing, or math, you can objectively analyze skills and in those professions and in those tests.
The left today has a situation where they have to explain how is it that the penniless parents of a Vietnamese immigrant who arrive in America, who talk about the greatness of this new American dream they have, who raise, their children to value education and to do their very best. They apply to Harvard, and this is actually making its way through the Supreme Court or up to the Supreme Court right now.
It's a monstrously important case.
They apply to Harvard, and they're told, oh, I'm sorry, your skin color as an Asian immigrant to the United States doesn't get you, and not only does it not get you the same benefit as being black or Latino, it is actually held against that student in that process. And somehow that's not racist, Clay. Somehow that's not unfair. The left hasn't been able to figure out how to explain that, although they will try these days to say it is actually an outgrowth. The Asian student, the problem there, it's actually an outgrowth of white supremacy.